Thank you. I have a question about rite of passage. You just mentioned that we're collectively going through the rite of passage of life and death, but also that rites of passage have been removed from our culture. And so I'm wondering, are they something to be created, or are they happening regardless?
I think all of the traditional forms of a kind of a fabricated rite of passage that is institutionalized in a tribe or a culture to bring the children to adulthood, that is gone. And therefore, people are biologically adults, but they are not psychologically in that state of freedom from childish things and immature attitudes, etc. So the rite of passage now is being performed by God directly by putting people into situations where they have to grow up. And this will become ever more extreme. And one will have to let go of one's attachments and one's desire for control, because it's all out of control. And as the system breaks down, everyone will come to realize in their own time that the system that they thought was out there is actually also in their consciousness. We are embedded in the system. We've been indoctrinated into it. We are mind controlled by it, whether we know that or not. As long as there is an identity, it's one that was given by that big other. And that identification is what sustains our ignorance and our weakness of will and our inability to open the third eye and see clearly, because we have lost even the belief that there is that possibility. So the rite of passage will come as grace, but it will not come as a result of one's being forcibly put through a social process, or at least not necessarily. It could be that your karma, let's say, forces you to be drafted into an army when you wanted to be in a peaceful state and you had no choice. So that could become a rite of passage, or fleeing from a war zone or a country that is collapsing. So there may be actions that will have to be taken that will push one out of one's comfort zone. But a sat yogi, one who is wise, will voluntarily go through the process of ego death and rebirth in spirit in a way that is much more organized as a surrender to an adoring, merciful God, and will receive the blessings and the grace of being able to achieve a resonance with that power of joy and love, and not have to go through, let's say, a kind of a hell realm or bardo state version of a rite of passage. And so that's highly recommended for all who are awake enough to make a choice. But often it can't be done by oneself. That's why an ashram is a useful kind of social organization in which all of our energies and teachings and practices are there to push one beyond the event horizon of the ego into the unknowable, and to discover what is one's nature that one was never able to own or feel or perceive because of the introjected projections of others that kept one in a state of reactivity and mimetic rivalry with the other, and not a state of freedom. So those bondages will fall away if one practices living in truth, right? But that's a very difficult practice. And that's why we gather in order to renew our commitment to a very, very subtle level of our being that could easily be ignored and forgotten. That help?
Thank you. It does help. I recognize that, throughout the day when I observe myself and others under that kind of pressure, and there's like psychosomatic things,
Yes.
illnesses happening, there's self-sabotage, there's justifications, you just see the ego just like squirming, and not actually even recognizing that it is being given this grace of being kind of delivered through the rite of passage. And this word that you just used, repose, I think is very useful, because I recognize that I'm not going to be able to solve it at the level of doing anything really. It's taking responsibility for my own level of consciousness that's going to make the most help. But I guess the question kind of persists a little bit when you see the ego push back, and there's a refusal for someone to recognize that it's a blessing to be under pressure, and instead a refusal to, let's say, even be cooperative at the level of the social order.
Sure.
It seems like there's a level of dharma combat almost there, that love first law, following that, but as we are put under more pressure, I imagine things come to a head.
The ego will tend to regress under pressure, right? To more immature ways of reacting and more aggressive and paranoid ways of reacting. So in a context like this, where we are awakening to the ego's games, we have to first realize the ego is a disgrace, and then we can apply for grace, right? When the soul has eliminated its attachment to the ego and to its ways of trying to cope, which create more obstacles and karma and trouble for others, right? So the most you can do if you're seeing this in another is, first of all, ask yourself, is this reflecting anything that I'm still going through? And then be able to apply compassion, but also clarity and truth and law when necessary, but always with the understanding that there but for fortune go you or I, and there has to be a humble acceptance of the need to go through such a passage without condemnation or judgment, but still without losing the coherence of what really has to happen in order for there to be a functional superorganism and remaining an active part of that communal superorganism, so that one is fed and nourished by it rather than seemingly attacked by it or ostracized or anything else. So we want to be all-inclusive in our understanding of the one consciousness and how we are learning from our own experience, but also from dealing with the experiences of others in a compassionate, let's say, recognition of our ultimate unity. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And one more question, if I may, is about chaos, like the correct way to kind of deal with those kinds of energies, because you often teach about like time speeding up, and I see that sometimes get interpreted within the Sangha as we have to make decisions more quickly. And I find that energy, I can just feel it. It's not the right place to be making decisions from. Yes. And I have a tendency just to slow things down if I feel there's a very chaotic kind of energy coming at me. But there's also a recognition that if I'm not in a state of repose, that I don't really have much to offer. So if it's true that I recognize that I'm not in my most kind of peaceful state or centeredness in that moment, but I can still have the discrimination to recognize that there's there's chaotic energies happening, is just speaking to it directly and saying that I feel like we're all not in our right mind in this moment, and just slowing things down accurate, because living in acceptance of chaos doesn't work for me. It doesn't feel like that's an accurate approach. There needs to be wisdom and hopefully enough of a peace in myself that I can transmit that to the other. But this thing is an alternating current until it's not.
Until it's not. But that is, in a way, our responsibility, to be immune from the chaos of the other and to be able to emanate a repose and a relaxed acceptance of the chaos, but of bringing it back to a ground of reason. We have to use our capacity to think and reason our way out of a chaotic situation and try to get on the same page with others so that there's a common perspective and a way in which all can agree that there's a path out of this. But it has to be done by the buddhi awakening and connecting intersubjectively with others. But there has to be an agreement to hear, to listen deeply, and to respond, and not from a place of, but this is my position, I've got to convince you of this, but of seeing how everyone contributes something to that whole vision, and we want to put it together in the most beautiful mandala in which everyone can play a part depending on what at least they are able to see and work with in a situation.
But it's also true that there's never actually a real understanding, and I understand that's the goal, but there's also inyapa. There's, like, you can get to the end of a conversation and have met about something and come up with a resolution that everyone agrees with, and the next time you get together, everyone had a completely different understanding of what we thought that we agreed on. So
that's possible, but it's also possible to get past that, to get to a place where there is a knowledge of the heart, where one really does have a resonance and an understanding that will remain constant, right? The problem with the ego is that it has a number of different conflicting subpersonalities, and the one who you reasoned with today may not be there tomorrow. So you have to find that core intellect that is able to bring unity within each being, so that that internal chaos does not become externalized. And each of us has a responsibility to achieve that within. And that's why we meditate so much, so that we can be a unified field of consciousness that is able to integrate all the information in the field without being biased toward one perspective or another.
No, and I appreciate also you're open by saying not to waste time. Like, given that that's the state of affairs, really, there's always time for being more centered. So
yes.
Okay.
So we all have to become very mature and responsible, and willing to do our part, and be aware of the fact that we are often sabotaged by our subconscious with a psychosomatic symptom or some other kind of an incoherence or a forgetfulness or some ego defense mechanism that is erupting, that really has no place in the conversation or the relationship, and that one must be able to see it internally and drop it and purify one's own consciousness, so that one can offer one's service without any of those obstructions. And I agree that, as it was said in this Ashtavakra, it's a rare being who is able to have that strength of mind and heart and will to be able to fearlessly proceed in a way that is accurate.
I definitely run into that whenever I perceive that there's like a scrutinizing of decisions that are being made or projects that I'm working on. There's a rational part of me that can recognize that it's just an uninformed opinion, and that's that's what egos do. And at the same time, there's another layer of defensiveness that comes up. That's not that fearlessness that you're speaking about.
Right.
So, in a way, how to override the fact that they coexist.
Yeah, well, this is why it's so essential to be free of the I thought, so that the general consciousness that is collectively manifesting is able to proceed without trying to control it or to let's say, make sure that one particular position always is dominant, right? Because you may have to alternate. The sailboat has to tack, and we have to sometimes be on one wheel and sometimes on the other, and sometimes we're on level ground on both. But we have to be very agile and flexible and simply allow things to unfold as the will of God determines. And swaha. Right?
All right. Swaha.
All right. Thank you, sir.